Keep 100% of your claim. G4 Claims.
If you've been hurt in a road accident that wasn't your fault, you should really talk to G4 Claims first. Unlike road accident solicitors, we don't charge you for our services, which could see you better off. To keep 100% of your compensation, have a chat with Nicole and the team. You'll be glad you did. Search online for G4 Claims.
Keep 100% of your claim. G4 Claims.
Hi and welcome to this week's episode of the DW podcast. I am joined by Paul Crawford, who I believe has got many stories for us, but at the moment, the founder and CEO of Panther Milk.
Yeah. Some of the stories might not be able to be broadcast. Keep that for after, Derek. But thanks for having me on the show.
No, delighted. I know we've spoken about it for a while and glad to get you on, but I think everywhere I turn at the moment, there is this drink. And that probably says more about me being in too many pubs or going to too many gigs or festivals or whatever, but everybody seems to be talking about this Panther Milk. I'll let you describe what that is, but yeah. I'm very keen to touch a wee bit on what it is, a bit about yourself, how you got to make this and the background behind it as well.
Cool.
But for those that are maybe watching or listening that don't know what Panther Milk is, how would you describe that?
It's, I guess it's kind of like it's the world's first oat milk alcohol brand, which we discovered when we launched. Nobody had actually done any plant milk based alcohol brand.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Which I was really surprised about. It's actually inspired by an old Spanish drink called Leche De Pantera.
Sure.
So dialing back, I used to own the sub club many years ago. So I worked in the sub club from 1991 to 2012.
Right, okay.
And I'd done every job in there, from unblocking toilets to eventually I promoted my own nights initially. That's how I got started. I used to run a club night called Cool Lemon many years ago. Right. Well, before that it was called Dream, and then it went into Cool Lemon.
And did that start in 91 or?
That started in 91, yeah. So, and before that I ran a kind of illegal breakfast club,
right,
afters club.
Brilliant. It's funny to hear that, because without making you feel a wee bit old, right? I was born in 89. And I feel like the 90s was the golden era, you know, the sub club or the dance music scene, and myself and a few of my mates often hark back to, wish we could have experienced it back then. You know?
It was crazy. I mean, it was because there's been nothing like it since, and I guess it's hard to imagine how there will ever be anything like it, because it was just so new. I mean, I think I was about 17 when I started getting into like house music, basically early house music. I was into kind of hip hop and stuff before that, and used to listen to a guy called Jeff Young on Radio 1, who was kind of like playing, you know, hip hop and early house music and stuff. And me and my pals started going into town, and I was from Cumbernauld boy originally. Couldn't wait to get out right enough once I got to about 17, 18. And we started going to clubs in Glasgow. Colin Barr actually took me the sub club, one of my first ever trips to the sub club, because he was DJing. He had a night called Fresh back in the day, and he was DJing in Cumbernauld, and me and my pal just was DJing a pub called Reflections, very 80s 90s kind of name, and me and my pal just started talking to him about the tunes he was playing, because we were right into the tunes he was playing, and eventually at the end of the night he said, I'm going through to Glasgow if he's wanting to come to me. I said, well, come to me. I was like, where are you going? He said, I'm going to sub club. And I'd heard about it. I'd been in it actually before it was a sub club. It was called Lucifer's.
Right.
And
I never knew that.
Aye. So that must have been 1986, 87. And then, so anyway, he took us outside, and he had this, I'll never forget it, this beautiful 911 Carrera, this white Porsche, and I'm like 17, 18, wee boy for a council estate.
Don't usually see that in Cumbernauld.
I was like, whoa. So I ended up in the back seat of his records, so squashed in, and then we went into the subway, and he got us on the guest list and everything. And that was kind of like a pivotal moment for me, because it was such an eye-opener to this other world. So I ended up promoting my own nights, eventually ended up 2002 getting involved in a management buyout, bought the club over. And
do you think that's because you fell in love with it for your earlier experiences?
100%. I mean, I was a punter before. I was like the club I always wanted to play for.
Aye.
Do you know what I mean? It was like one of those kind of
Standing
things.
outside with your shirt.
Aye. I mean,
Name in
I
the
used
back.
to go when Slam ran Atlantis, which was the weekly Saturday. I was there religiously every week.
Brilliant.
Every single week I would be there. And I was like a fanboy.
Aye.
So when I got the opportunity, that was what inspired me to go and run my own club nights. And then I knew the owner just from being there all the time. And he eventually asked me, did I want to come and run a weekly Friday at the sub club? And I done that for a while. That was a cool lemon night. And then they asked me to come and work for them as a promotions manager.
Brilliant.
Aye, so that was how I got started. But there is I feel like a bit of Billy Connolly here, a wee tangent, but it does come back to the Panther Milk here at some point. So basically, we used to run these kind of club events as part of the Fringe of Sona,
in Barcelona.
Aye, the music festival there. So we went. Somebody took us to a bar in the Gothic Quarter called Vista Bar that sold this drink called Leche De Pantera. And that's one of the stories I can't tell you. I mean, we got smashed on that. But I was drinking it like it was just milk. It was so easy to drink. And then it was like...
This should come with a warning. It is too easy to drink.
That Billy Connolly, you get drunk with the legs up sort of thing, you know. So I went out and I was like, whoa, outside, you know. And then I can't really say too much about what happened in the night after that, but... me and my friends, Harry from the sub club and Dominic and stuff, we were telling everybody about this drink. And we went back the following year to the pub and there was maybe about 30 Glaswegians in it, all drinking Leche De Pantera. Aye,
because so the word had spread.
Aye, so some of the young crew, like Jack Master and Jasper, Harry's son and all that. And then the following year again, it was even more. There was just all these Scottish people drinking Leche De Pantera. So at that point I thought to myself, I'd quite like to open a wee bar in Glasgow or do something in Glasgow just selling Leche De Pantera. Sure. So a pal of mine, Fergus, who owns the Berkeley Suite in different places, Chinaski's, he'd just bought the old Bar 10 in Mitchell Lane.
Yep.
And he said he had this wee kind of space. It was almost like a secret bar. You went through a fire escape. You were in this wee space, maybe only held about 30 people. And it had an old 1950s goods elevator in it. And he was like, have you got any ideas what I could do with this? I think it's a crack wee space. I said, I've got the perfect thing for it. We'll do a Panther Milk bar. And he was like, what the heck's a Panther Milk bar? I was like, well, it's this drink from Spain. So we initially just said,
because just on that, the translation is exactly
Panther it's Milk of the Panther. Milk of the Panther. So basically, we launched this wee bar, and it just went bananas. You know, it was just so popular. So it was initially just meant to run for 3 months over the summer, and then we just thought, well, can I not continue this because it's just so popular? So we just kept it running, and then Vice magazine actually done a big article on it, and from there it just went even more bananas. So we ended up, you know, people from Canada, all over, Japan, China, amazing, you know, people who were visiting the city because they'd read this article in there. So it lasted 4.5 years until the bar was sold. But at that time, I'd sold my share in the sub club, and I'd started working for a kind of tech startup business called Kilter, which was, for want of a better description, a bit like a Scottish LinkedIn. Sure. So I went there as their kind of creative director initially, looking after the brand and doing all the branding stuff for them, doing events. So we launched Scotland's first ever street food festival called Street Festival down at the Barras. And I was working with them, and it was quite a full-on job, so it was pretty stressful at times. So I didn't have any time to devote to the Panther Milk thing, but I always thought I want to do something with this. And then
I suppose being around those kind of street food festivals as well, there's a place for that.
Absolutely, aye. So I kind of knew that it had legs. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I kind of knew that there was something in it. I always just thought the name Panther Milk was brilliant. Absolutely. For one thing, because it's quite alluring. It's what the hell was that? You know, it sounds a bit dangerous.
Totally.
So.
But Paul, what just to touch back a wee bit, so when you had it in Spain, It wasn't the oat milk they were putting in it?
No, it was full dairy.
What made the change? Were you vegan, vegetarian? Or
well, when we had the wee secret bar, it was made with dairy and it was made with condensed dairy milk, but maybe about halfway through that stint, I watched Cowspiracy, on Netflix.
So many people did, didn't they?
And I kind of was like, right, I need to have a think about my own consumption of what I'm doing to the planet. Climate change isn't going away. I mean, obviously, at the moment, it's all about cost of living, which is probably foremost in people's minds, but at the same token, we still have a climate emergency going on. So I just started making wee changes to my own life. So I stopped, doing dairy. I stopped drinking dairy milk. I became pescatarian at that point.
Sure.
And when we actually finished in the bar, we always had vegan options, but the drink was primarily made with dairy milk. But when I went to actually look at making it into a proper drinks brand, I wanted it to be as sustainable as possible.
Absolutely.
So we played around with various different plant milks, and oat milk was by far the best one.
Absolutely.
So that's how we ended up there.
Sorry to jump in there, but I was thinking, it's interesting because, as you touched on, you've got a climate crisis, you've got more people becoming aware of what they're consuming. It almost doesn't limit yourself, whereas if you are a dairy product, you're limiting your audience.
Absolutely.
Whereas people that would drink dairy or eat dairy, they wouldn't notice the difference.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, we've won 2 gold medals at different international awards with the drink. When we actually switched to oat milk, I actually preferred the taste of it. So it wasn't like, it was a bit of a no-brainer.
Slightly sweeter and
and we gave it round roads of my friends to try it and everything, and everybody was like, "No, this is better." Do you know what I mean? It's actually better, and you know how, especially dairy can really bloat your stomach and stuff like that, and it can really, especially any kind of lactose intolerance, and you forget about it. So that's kind of how we ended up back there. So I was kind of describing the kind of kilter thing, so that we were literally, so at the start of the pandemic, we'd went over there, over to Singapore, because that's where our main investor was based in Singapore. They were just coming out of their first lockdown, which was a bit weird because coronavirus was only a news story here. So it was kind of weird. You're getting your temperature taken, going into buildings. Everybody was wearing masks, and we hadn't seen that yet here. So it was all very strange, but we came back celebrating because we thought we'd get a big investment basically. So we were just short of £1 million investment agreed with the existing investor, and he'd brought in a Singaporean billionaire. So we were like, happy days. This is brilliant. So as I said, we're all kind of celebrating on the way back, and then literally 9 days after we get back, we went into lockdown, and all our customers were in hospitality. I mean, I'd managed to get maybe about 100 odd bars, restaurants using this Wi-Fi kind of marketing technology that we developed. And I had the SEC campus agree to a trial. Celtic Park were going to do a trial. Some really kind of big customers lined up. And
timing couldn't be worse.
Time couldn't be worse. Public Wi-Fi. Nobody's got to be about. So quite understandably, the guys withdrew their offer of investment. And literally within 15 days, everybody in the Glasgow office was made redundant, including myself.
That's brutal, isn't it? For that high to that low.
I mean, it was literally within 3 weeks of celebrating a big investment. We were all out of work. So it was a bit of a joke, it was a bit of a, right, what am I going to do here?
Absolutely.
And as the old saying goes, necessity is the mother of invention. So I was like, right, I need to maybe focus on this Panther Milk thing,
I love hearing stories like this, just to jump in, because I feel for so many people, lockdown was terrible, they lost loved ones, people lost jobs, but it gave so many creative people, like yourself, which we're going to touch on, that opportunity to really flourish as well.
Aye, absolutely, aye. I mean, that saying is a saying for a reason, because when you're basically on your arse and you're thinking, what am I going to do? I mean, I had a family to support, I've got 3 kids, I was like, right, what am I going to do here? I need to do something. I need to do it quick. And obviously
panic sets in as well, doesn't it?
Aye, absolutely. And trying to find a job during a pandemic's no easy either. So I was kind of right, and especially I'd just literally turned 50 as well.
Happy birthday, mate, aye, you know,
50th birthday during lockdown as well. I was like, oh, this is great. So my sister actually got me into meditating, which really helped me through that period. So I'd kind of, because I was stressed out my box, you know, it was a very, very stressful time. So I started exercising loads. I started meditating every day, and that really helped me just focus on what I was very, very fortunate, and a lot more fortunate than a lot of people, because when this investor came into the tech business, I had a wee bit of worry about my job, so I took out income protection insurance, which is not something I never thought I would ever do, but I took it out. It was a pal of mine recommended it at the time, and that gave me 75% of my salary for a year, basically. So it was an absolute lifesaver. So it just meant,
and that was before the pandemic hit.
That was before. It was
ideal, wasn't it?
It was so fortunate because. And there was no exclusions about coronavirus because nobody knew what it was. So it was really, really fortunate, and it just allowed me a bit of comfort, a bit of space to go and exercise and go and meditate, and a lot of people wouldn't have that comfort and fortune. So I just used the time quite wisely, and I kind of reflected a bit, and I looked at what I wanted to do. And then I started working on Panther Milk and just started looking at how you take a drinks brand to market, basically. So
and at this stage, Paul, you wouldn't have had any premises, you wouldn't have you're starting from scratch.
I start from scratch, absolutely nothing.
I suppose it's very different to making cocktails or making a drink in the back room.
Absolutely, aye. And I mean, launching a drinks brand, I mean, you're up against a lot of big players in there, you know, big companies with big pockets, and it's no easy. So I started looking basically at investment and how I'd learned a lot through the tech company about investment, because we were funded by a company in Edinburgh called Par Equity, who's like an investment angel investors type company. So I'd learned a lot about investment during my time there. So, so I kind of just started looking at the best options for me in terms of investment and what I would do to try and raise money, because I knew I'd need quite a bit of money to be invested in the business. And I started actually going down the crowdfunding route, that because we'd built up a bit of a cult following in Glasgow. And I thought, well, we've got this customer base, we've got this kind of cult following, so maybe crowdfunding might be the way to go. So I invested a bit of money in a programme that kind of takes you through from your idea to actually going on to one of the platforms like Crowdcube or Cedars and launching. So I kind of was halfway through that programme, and I built out my lead investors. So I spoke to some people that I knew about potentially investing, and I had a bit of money promised to me in terms of investment. And then I got an email pop into my inbox from the BBC asking if I'd be interested in doing the Dragon's Den. And
that's really interesting, because I always think people go to Dragon's Den rather than they come to you as well. So.
Well, I didn't know that either. I mean, that was something I didn't know, that they've got researchers and stuff who go out and pick businesses that think some of the Dragons
That's brilliant.
like.
That's really good.
I mean?
It makes sense as well, doesn't it?
Aye. I mean, I think they get thousands of people applying every year as well for it. So, but they've also got these people that go out and kind of cherry pick.
Sure.
I mean, we were only literally 6 months old when that, in fact, probably not even 6 months old. I think that happened in March. I think that popped into my inbox, and we'd kind of launched in October.
Right.
So I was a bit taken aback for one thing that I was getting asked, but I suppose they look at early stage kind of startups.
Were you sceptical, or were you like, I need to do this?
Well, no, I was sceptical, and I kind of said no at first. I was like, this isn't for me, you know.
Right.
I've already I'm halfway through this programme, and I paid a few grand to go on this programme to take me through, so I was kind of like, this isn't for me. My first reaction was,
Honestly,
I'm not doing this, I was kind of like, I'm not doing this.
It's also like you're putting yourself out there. You know, it's like if you don't get invested, do you then come away looking like a dick?
Totally. So I'd kind of, my first reaction was to say no, but the guy who was he was an assistant producer on the show. He was from Scotland, from Aberdeen, and he kind of used to go to the sub club and he studied in
Brilliant.
Glasgow and all that, so he was kind of like...
I trust this guy.
Aye, he was quite good at
He's alright.
chatting to me and talking me around. And so I got into a few conversations, and I was obviously spoke to pals and family and all that about what do you think. And it was kind of split. It was some, you know, but it wasn't everybody. I would have thought maybe everybody would go for it.
That's it.
But some people were like, no, you don't want to do that and everything.
I think that's maybe a Scottish thing.
Aye.
You know,
Aye.
it's that hesitation or Stockholm. I don't know, like, what they try to scam you out of, what do they want for you?
Aye. And I'd been reading, coincidentally, I'd been reading Alex Ferguson's book at the time.
Brilliant.
And there was a chapter in it, and I'd literally just read this chapter just before this all happened. It's funny how fate works sometimes, but...
You always remember these things as well, don't you?
And there was a bit in it, and it always just sticks in my mind, and he said, if an opportunity, I'm a believer that if an opportunity presents itself to you, you should grab it with both hands.
Yep.
So that kept going through my head, and I was like, right, I think I need to give this a shot, I think, you know, because I just thought, well, the publicity,
Absolutely.
even if I had this wee fantasy idea in my head as well, that I would go on the show, and if I got offered investment, I would just say no.
I beat it.
I'd walk off, do you know what I mean? But unfortunately I bottled it. But I ended up, as I said, I went through the various different processes and kept getting through each stage, and then eventually...
Were you nervous? I can imagine that's quite a daunting experience.
It was weird, because it was a bit weird and a bit surreal, because, as I said, we were so young. We were only 4 months old, really, in terms of being a drinks brand. So I was kind of like, this has happened so quick. And I kept a bit... Old Alex's nagging thing in the back of my head, you know, kept going through it. And I thought, right, I'm just going to go for it here. Because I can always say no. I kept thinking, well, if I get offered investment, I can always say no. And I kept thinking to myself, as long as I don't look like an arsehole,
that's it, aye.
Then it's not really going to damage me too much, you know, or the brand too much. So I ended up deciding to go for it, and eventually just kept getting through each stage. I mean, it was weird as well, because we were in lockdown. I didn't go for an audition as such. I had to do a video thing.
Ah, right.
Aye, so I had to record.
Because I think for those that watch it in the telly, it's as if, I would imagine, people think you're turning up for your first time.
Aye.
You know, there's no bean stages behind the scenes.
Aye, no, there's quite a rigorous process that you have to go through. Apart from anything else, you have to go through like a BBC due diligence.
Right, okay.
So they go through everything. You go right into your background, stuff you've said in dress, everything.
Just don't ask you about that night in Barcelona.
Luckily, that was the end of the press. It was quite a rigorous due diligence process you have to go through. And then, because I mean, I remember they even called me one day. And there was a thing years and years and years ago when there was a tragedy at the Arches nightclub, and there was a girl died in there after taking ecstasy. And I get kind of a wee bit set up by one of the newspapers, and they'd kind of called me saying they were doing a big article on ecstasy in clubs and drugs death. And I'd left the sub club at this point in time.
Sure.
And they kind of asked me for my thoughts on it. And I'd kind of said at the time that I thought if they decriminalised drugs,
absolutely,
then there's probably less chance of that type of thing happening, because the problem probably was that
what's in these tablets,
what's in them, you know, and what the dosage is that people don't go. You know what I mean? So that was my response, and then
I think for many that is a sensible, logical, response, but it's a practice that's worked in other countries around the world,
absolutely,
you know.
In Portugal,
but you can see why that could be sensationalised by the media.
So the next day, the headline was, former club boss calls for drugs to be legalised. So I felt a wee bit set up by that. So the Beeb called me and asked me about this.
Really?
As part
it's outrageous, isn't it?
Process.
They just want to cover their own backs, aren't they?
And to be honest, I just answered it the way I answered it there.
Yeah.
And they were like, fine. I think they were just wanting to see if that came out after the show, that what I would say about it, you know. So just a lot of arse covering, probably.
Absolutely.
So I ended up getting the date, and it was June last year, end of June last year, to go down and actually pitch to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Who was on the panel again? Because it was Deborah Meaden that then said that she would invest, wasn't it?
Aye. So it was Peter Jones, Stephen Bartlett,
That's right.
Deborah Meaden, Sarah Davies, and Tucker.
Yeah.
Aye. Aye.
And I actually thought, if I remember right, because it was a while, was it a few months ago it was on?
It was broadcast at the end of March.
So
it was quite a
and they were
while.
very complimentary, you know, even those that didn't invest.
Aye. I mean, again, the magic of television. On the actual show, I was the first one on that particular show to go.
Okay.
But on the actual day, I was the last one to go.
Okay.
So they told me to be there midday.
Did you have to go down to London for this?
It was Manchester.
Manchester,
It gets filmed. Aye. So they told me to be there at midday. Me and my girlfriend left Glasgow early, drove down, just stayed overnight in Manchester. But we got there about 11:30 in the morning, plenty of time. And then I didn't pitch till 8:30 at night.
You're joking.
No.
What the hell, that's a long day,
It's
isn't
a
it?
long wait. So again, I think if I hadn't...
And you could be overthinking that all day, couldn't you?
Well, the thing was, so at the start of the day, you're in a thing called the green room, and it's like everybody who's pitching that day is all in that room.
Right.
And they've maybe got 3 dressing rooms, so as everybody moves through, you end up getting a dressing room.
Got you.
But, so it was maybe halfway through the day I ended up getting a dressing room, but you don't... It's kind of like, I ended up getting my pitch completely arse over tit, because I just was
You've probably went over it so many times in your head,
And again, if I hadn't started meditating, I would have probably had scalped a couple of bottles of Panther Milk and went out and made a complete arse of myself. But luckily I was doing meditating, so I meditated about 3 times.
Really, on that day?
Yeah. I just had a wee 10-15 minutes out meditating, which just calmed me down and just gave me the headspace to chill out and no worry about it. And then by the time because it's alcohol as well, that's why I was last.
It has to be over a certain time.
Because I think they don't want the dragons tipsy with their money.
Right, okay.
Aye.
Okay.
So
start regretting their decisions straight away.
So I think by the time I went out, I could tell as soon as that lift door opened and I looked at them, and it was quite funny. I don't know if you remember, but I'd picked a bit of music from a Glasgow band called the Glasgow band called Den Han, who used to play at the Sub Club and stuff, and they've got a track called Release the Beast. And
brilliant.
It's got this kind of big roar, like a panther's roar or lion's roar at the start of it. So I'd asked for them to put smoke and lasers and all that on and play this tune as I came out the lift. So it was quite funny. I could see them all perched up.
That sets you apart, especially at that time of night.
Well, I didn't know I was going to be at that time of night, but it definitely perked them up a bit. You know what I mean? So, but I could tell kind of instantly. I could tell by some of the body language that they were just want to go home.
Really, yeah.
Maybe, you know, I could tell Peter Jones had checked out. The thing is, again, so each dragon has a set amount. I think it's 300 grand per series to invest.
Okay. So if that's gone and you're on at that time of night,
so all day I just kept hearing people coming in going, "Yes, got 3 dragons," and "Yes, I'll get 2 dragons. Yes, I get 1 dragon."
the money's gone.
I'm just thinking that pot's going down and down and down. So by the time I went on, I could tell there was a couple of them just knackered, wanting to be up the road. I mean, they'd probably been there for 13, 14 hours.
Absolutely.
So I'd done my pitch, which I think went pretty well, and then we get into the nitty-gritties. But 3 of them all loved the name, all loved the brand, all were really complimentary. Peter Jones was really complimentary about it. I think I had Stephen Bartlett on the hook, who was one of the ones, my 2 that I wanted when I were on the show was Stephen Bartlett and Deborah Meaden.
Yep.
That would have been my dream duo, if you like. And he asked me, but Stephen Bartlett asked me a question, what was my marketing strategy? And I can remember, because marketing is basically my background, so basically the Sub Club and everything, I'd done mostly all the marketing, promotions, marketing, done a lot of that stuff. And I was so focused on the figures that my sister says there's a thing your brain does called chunking. So if you're really, really focused on something, a simple question can sometimes
throw you off. Yeah.
And that's what happened. So I started waffling a lot of shit about basically influencers and festivals and blah blah blah, and he was just no, have you got a marketing strategy?
Yeah.
And at that point I just thought, well, I'm not gonna just keep waffling, so I just said, look, I don't know all the answers here, that's why I'm here, because I wanted to say to him, well, you're the marketing guy.
Aye.
You know,
I'm not going to tell you how to.
Aye.
It's that old saying, you don't teach your granny how to suck eggs or something like that.
But I think I had him up until that point. I think because that wee exchange, because he was really complimentary, liked to drink, liked the brand, everything, but he just kind of was like, oh, I think I'm going to have to put too much into this. So he bowed out, and then I think a few of them bowed out before him. I called Sarah Davies Sarah.
She's gone.
And I kind of knew she was straight away at that. Annoyed her, I think.
Come on, no, get over it.
I know, but I could tell she was a wee bit prickly after that, you know. I was like, oh God, but luckily Deborah saved my blushes.
But were you, because you pitched a lower percentage, didn't you? He says that I want to give you, was it 15%?
Aye, so I'd went 7.5%. I'd asked for 50 grand. But bearing in mind, I already had investors lined up at a valuation which was significantly higher than that.
Sure.
So I also had the investors that had already promised me money in mind. I didn't want to devalue what they were investing. So whilst obviously a dragon brings more than investment, so do a lot of these guys, because a couple of the guys I've got as investors are industry guys. Sure. You know, so
just because they're not on the telly and visible doesn't mean they don't have the same contacts.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I kind of, you know, at that point when Deborah Meaden she kept very quiet during it all, you know, and she just kind of, I knew she was interested because one, it's a vegan brand. She's been a vegan for 3 years. And I could tell she was interested, but she played it really well. So she just waited till everybody checked out, and then she said she loved it, basically. Yeah. But that meant that then my negotiating position was weakened.
Because you don't have the other ones.
I didn't have to play offer.
Yep.
So I kind of managed to get her. She offered 50 grand for 30%. And I managed to get her down 5%, but and then I done the old went to the wall and all that.
I think about it.
Rubbing my head vigorously and pulling my skin.
You don't want to come across too keen, do you?
And as I said before I went on it, I had this fantasy of just saying no and walking away, because I knew I had investment lined up. Sure. But also there's that thing thinking, well, maybe they can probably open a lot of doors and So,
and you're in your own headspace at that time. It's not as if you can turn to someone, is it? You know.
No, exactly. So I went to the wall, and then I came back, and I was standing there, and I can remember I was standing there thinking, am I going to say no? Am I going to say no? But Stephen Bartlett was shouting, do it. He was shouting you know, and I had Sarah Davies on the other side saying, take it.
Oh, no pressure, mate.
And I was just like. And I knew in the back of my head as well, you get 2 weeks due diligence and cooling down process after it, so either side can back out. And a lot of the deals don't go through. Right. So I just, you know, I thought, okay, that would be good for the cameras and everything else if I just say yes, we've got a deal. So that's
brilliant.
What I did.
And since then, you've parted ways, eh?
Aye. So I've got to say, she's been brilliant though. She's been really class. I
read an interview you done. I can't remember who it was with, and you says, you know, still got a number, she'll give me advice. She'll
gave me a mobile number, gave me an email address. I'd explained that I had these lead investors lined up, and I was going to go down the crowdfunding route. She asked me what my overall plan and strategy was with the business, and for me, it's always been about building the brand up and then hopefully being acquired. Yeah. So I make no bones about that, you know. Yeah. And she said, well, the crowdfunding thing can be problematic if you want to exit the business. Sure. So I would advise you.
Because you've got X amount of shareholders or so. Yeah.
So I ended up getting a wee bit more lead investment than I'd originally planned, and just went with them, never went to the crowd. Okay. But she said, when I explained my whole strategy, if you like, she said, well, I think you'd be better saying no to my offer of investment. And I was kind of like, well, I'm glad you said that, because that's what I was
going to do, yeah.
And she said, well, look, I really like what you're doing, I like you, and I'll still help you as much as I can within reason. And she has, you know, she's
That's
been
brilliant.
great. So a lot of the stuff when I was doing the investment round, that first seed investment round, she gave me quite a good bit of advice. If ever I emailed her, she'd be back within 48 hours with an answer.
That's excellent.
She got me in. She got the brand into another TV show that she was on. And she's introduced me to people here and there. Excellent. As well. So she's been great.
Good.
She's been really good.
So overall, it's been a positive experience.
I think so. I definitely think so. I mean, just
those doubts have faded away, and you thought, I'm glad I've done it.
Aye. I mean, before it was broadcast, I was thinking, was that worth it? Do you know what I mean? Because it does take a lot of effort, you know. Because as I said, you're going through that due diligence stuff and everything, and it, you know, it was maybe about 2 or 3. I felt as if at that time it was 2 or 3 months business development that I didn't do because I was so focused on the Dragons Den thing. So it was kind of like, before the broadcast I was questioning, is this worth it? But after the broadcast...
Did you see a surge afterwards of people clicking on the website, buying the product?
We managed to get our own Shopify site up and running the day before.
No way.
So
God, you cutting it fine there.
That was cutting it fine. But the sales... We capitalised on that, because that's where you get the best margin in your product from selling it direct. So it really that really boosted us. But I think it's just the validation as well.
Yep.
You know, the validation that it gives you. It does open doors, and it does put you on the map a bit.
Yep.
You know, I mean, it's like it's like a free advert to 3.5 million people or whatever, you know. So
it almost feels like on Twitter you've got your blue tick now. You know, one of the Dragons has gave you that that endorsement, you know.
Absolutely. And I think, so from that point of view, I think it was worth it.
It's funny that you touched on your marketing strategy and you said festivals and influencers, and you were like, because over the summer that looks exactly what you've been done. I've seen photos of, you know, Martin Compston, some of the other bands. Have you had was Sam Fender? No,
LF System.
LF System,
the boys, they were there. They were there nearly every day at Transmit. Scooping the Panther Milk was great. They're absolutely sound as well. Really lovely guys. I think they're from Coatbridge, aren't they? And then we've had, as you said, Martin Compston. We've had Guy Mogs, kind of rapper guy. We've loads and loads. Kerry Chandler, loads of DJs that we know, giving it props. You know, again, because my background, part of the way we want to do the marketing is in music, design, kind of art stuff, and events. You know, so part of my original business plan was saying, coming out of lockdown, obviously hospitality industry's pretty on its knees in a lot of places, so I would quite like to try and give something back to the hospitality industry in terms of events and stuff like that, and, you know, be able to hopefully direct some of the marketing budget to operators who are selling Panther Milk, and be able to do stuff like that, you know. So that was part of my marketing strategy. It wasn't the marketing strategy, but it was part of the marketing strategy.
Because I think it sounds like a cliche with some brands, like, you know, there's more to this, it's a community. But when you look on your social media, it does feel like you're creating a community, and that comes from the background that you're in. You know, you've done the t-shirts for 1 of 100, you're at the festivals. It seems like there's that. Those people at the start that wear that cult following are still there just now, and it's only growing. You know?
Absolutely. And I think, again, just quite fortunate, because a lot of people have really helped me, you know. I mean, it's not just me that's doing this. There's a whole, I mean, my girlfriend works on the brand. She's the brand director, Brenna, and she's on, at the moment, she's working full time on a part-time wage. Till we hopefully get our next bigger round of investment in. But there's been so many other people help me. I formed a wee advisory board, and they've been amazing. So kind of guys like was the head of marketing for Iron Brew, guys head of sales for a beer brand, and they've been really instrumental in helping me. So there's so many people helping.
Who done the initial branding on the bottles? Because it's fantastic.
I mean, we get complimented about that all the time. It's a guy, Andy Skinner, who I worked at Kilter with. And we worked together really well. And Andy's an amazing designer. So I'd kind of come up with the original idea of, because Leche De Pantera, the Spanish drink, has its origins 1920s, 30s in Spain. So I wanted something kind of Art Deco looking.
Got
So I'd done a bit of research and found all these kind of old cigarette cards and drinks brands from the 30s on Pinterest, and just sent loads of him. And I had the idea of having a Panther sitting down because I wanted to make it not so masculine. You know,
As if it's relaxed.
Because you could have made it look really, really fierce, but I kind of thought, well, our demographic actually 60% female to male, so I wanted to soften it up a bit and make it a bit more feminine. So that's why the Panther's sitting down looking at a butterfly with the rays of sun coming down, you know, so it was just to kind of soften it up a bit.
That's brilliant. What's the next steps then? And have you been back to that bar in Spain with this?
Well, no, unfortunately.
That feels
not,
like it has to go. Oh, you're joking.
No, it closed down.
Maybe you could open up a bar earlier.
I know. I kind of, you know, it's one of those ones I kind of always think, well, because there will be opportunities to take it to Spain.
Absolutely.
For sure. But I always kind of hesitate going, what if they just chase me out of town?
Who's this guy copying what we do best?
But,
not at all.
But I think we're just at the stage now that we're looking for a much bigger investment. So that seed investment got us through to this point, and we've won, as I said, we've won 2 international gold medals. We won Spirits Business, a gold medal in the Spirits Business Awards last year in the pre-mixed ready-to-drink cocktail category. This year we won another gold medal at the International Wine and Spirit Championships, and we scored 95 out of 100.
That's amazing.
With it. We've also won On Trade Scotland. We won the Emerging Brand of the Year. So we've just this year it's been all about building the brand. And that will continue, obviously, but we're in talks with a couple of people about potential big investment. So that's the kind of next steps would be to build out a team, get people to do jobs that I'm doing that can do it much better than I can. Because like there's, you know, I know what I'm good at, I know what I'm not good at, so it's really getting people into the positions that are better at doing it than me.
And I think that's refreshing to hear, because when someone builds up a brand like this, it's so easy to keep your cards close to your chest and think, no, I know best. But the brands that really do thrive are those that think, well, come and teach me.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you've got to have some humility and know what your weaknesses are. And I think it's exciting for me, the prospect of employing people and building a team. And keeping it in Glasgow, I think, is important to me as well. So hopefully we can keep the production, everything in Glasgow, and scale that up as well.
Excellent. Where is it just now? Is it Southside?
It's Shawlands, So there's guys at Dark Art Drinks that have worked very closely with me over the years, a couple of years, to produce the drink. And they've been brilliant, and they've got a unit in Shawlands that's all made in. But again, you know, ideally I'd like for them to scale up as I'm scaling up, and keep all the production in Glasgow. That would be the dream scenario. And then we're just looking at the UK market now. We're in London, Manchester, Wales. We're all over the UK now. So we're just looking at how we've also got a lot of interest from the big supermarkets for next year. So probably 4 out the big 6 have expressed an interest. So again, we're just looking at how we scale up, basically.
And you've already scaled out with different flavours as well.
So that's the coffee one you've got. You could maybe stick that in your coffee then.
I'll wait till later. I need to drive home, Paul, after this.
But we've got 3 permanent flavours now: the coffee, the vanilla, and the strawberry one.
Brilliant.
And then we do like limited edition ones like mint, salted caramel and stuff. We'll be doing a special one coming into the Christmas again, because it's oat milk. It's a, you know, get the Baileys,
absolutely. Absolutely.
Get the Baileys out your fridge and get Panther Milk in there. Because I think it lends itself so easily to hot drinks. You can drink it as a shot, you can drink it long. So it's quite versatile that way.
Good. Do you drink it yourself?
Oh, aye.
I think this would be concerning if I had all these bottles in the evenings.
No, I do. A lot. People ask me, you know, bored of it, and I say no. Well, it's kind of like if you get into, you know, if you're a rum drinker, you drink rum most of the time.
That's it, aye.
And I do love it. It's and I'll drink it as a shot or long. It's really nice shaken up in a cocktail shaker and then strained, and then with ice, and then strained, and then a wee sprinkle of cinnamon on the top. You've got pretty much a banging cocktail, because there's 4 different spirits in that.
Okay.
So again, back to the Leche De Pantera thing. It's normally made with gin, rum, and brandy over there.
Sure.
So we've got overproof spiced rum, white rum, gin, brandy, coffee liqueur, and espresso.
Right.
So there's a lot goes into it. 'Cause
Sure.
some people go, it's a bit expensive, but
Yeah.
there's quite a lot in it.
Absolutely.
And we make our own condensed oat milk as well.
Right.
So the boys at Dark Art Drinks have developed that themselves because we couldn't find one that kind of emulsified properly.
Sure.
So they've ended up making it themselves.
That's it. I don't think people realise the amount that goes in to make
Aye.
a bottle that size as well, you know.
Aye. And the wee bottles as well, because the wee bottles are quite expensive seeming but they take the same labour costs as the big bottles.
Absolutely.
So we're just trying to work on how as we scale up, how we can bring the cost down a bit, you know, because that's one of the challenges that we've got at the moment.
And there's around about 15%.
15%, aye, so same as Bucky.
I remember seeing the Vice interview, I think it was Vice, and it was saying only a Scottish guy could compare that to Buckfast in a positive manner. You know?
So I was hoping, actually, I know Lewis Capaldi likes it.
Right, good.
He's been drinking it in Bananamoon, because a pal of mine owns Bananamoon, and he said Lewis Capaldi's likes it. So I managed to get a bottle sent to transmit to his...
Well, he's good pals with the Boys for Your Life system as well.
Aye, exactly, aye.
Yeah.
So I managed to get a bottle sent to his dressing room at transmit, so I was hoping
he'd post
he
it.
was going to walk out, you know, because he always walks out with a bottle of Buckfast. And I was hoping he was going to walk out with a bottle of Panther Milk, but no, this year.
There you are,
Hopefully
Capaldi.
next
If you hear this is what you need to do next year.
I know, support a Glasgow brand.
Exactly. Exactly. Oh, that's brilliant. Oh, Paul, it's been an absolute pleasure hearing your story. Final question for me, put you on the spot. Where do you see Panther Milk in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, hopefully I would like to see it as going international, because I think it's definitely got that potential. So UK market, I would like to see it as the number one vegan drinks brand in the UK, and then going forward from there, I think there's definitely, like, you could imagine, especially west side of America, California, all around that Bay Area, San Francisco, I could see it doing really well over in the States. I can see it doing well in a lot of territories. We've had quite a bit of interest in the Far East.
Really? Yeah.
Because
Good.
again, they're not so big in dairy milk over there.
Sure.
So I could see it doing well in Japan. I could see it doing well, you know, all over that kind of Thailand, Singapore, kind of round about there. So I'd just love to see it grow and go global. That would be an absolute dream.
That's it.
To see it actually coming out of the UK, coming out of Scotland, and
Brilliant.
flying the flag.
It's always good to see Scottish brands do well, and I feel that when you've got that Scottish flag behind you, you know, it's better to push abroad. And people always buy into this Irish, Scottish heritage, you know, and
absolutely,
this has got a story in itself, you know, and hopefully as you do grow, you can keep it in Glasgow, as you mentioned.
I know,
as well.
absolutely. That would be that's kind of more important. That would give me more satisfaction than anything. Would be creating jobs in Glasgow.
Absolutely.
That would give me some buzz.
Listen, it's going to happen.
Aye.
I don't need to tell you that it's going to happen. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks very much.
Cheers,
Top man.
thanks a lot.
Cheers.
Pal.
Thanks to everyone who has watched or listened to this episode of the podcast. Please go check out Panther Milk, get some for yourself, and listen to some previous episodes if you've enjoyed this one. Cheers.